One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36.
Marilyn Monroe didn't just light up movie screens. She owned them. By the 1950s and 60s, she had become a larger-than-life icon whose beauty and charm poured through television screens straight into the hearts of millions. She wasn't just a star, she was a sensation, appearing in blockbuster hits and even sharing the spotlight with the legendary Frank Sinatra. She was everywhere. But in August 1962, the world was blindsided. Marilyn Monroe, only 36 years old, was suddenly gone. The glamorous icon was found dead, and the world stood still. But what really happened that night? Why did she die so young? After 6 long decades of silence, Frank Sinatra finally revealed chilling truths about that tragic moment. His confessions left people speechless. Marilyn Monroe's early life, before the fame and flashing cameras, she was just Norma Jean Mortensen. Born on June 1st, 1926, she would later become the blonde bombshell the world couldn't stop talking about. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, came from a quiet Midwest family that had moved to California in the early 1900s. At just 15, Gladys married John Newton Baker, a man nearly a decade older. But things turned ugly fast. Their marriage collapsed, and Gladys won full custody of their kids, Robert and Bernice. But John wasn't ready to let go. In a shocking move, he kidnapped both children and fled to Kentucky. Monroe didn't even know she had a sister until she was 12. The two finally met in 1944, when Marilyn was a teenager. Imagine discovering you have a sister after more than a decade. After her first divorce, Gladys worked as a film negative cutter in Hollywood and had a brief second marriage in 1924 to Martin Edward Mortensen. That relationship fizzled out fast, ending in divorce by 1928. Monroe carried his last name, but in a jaw-dropping twist, DNA tests in 2022 pointed to someone else entirely, Charles Stanley Gifford, as her real father. Turns out, Gladys had a secret affair with him in 1925. That revelation added 2 more names to Monroe's family tree, half-siblings Doris Elizabeth and Charles Stanley Jr. Though Gladys was mentally and financially ready for a child, life didn't go as planned. In the beginning, little Marilyn had a pretty stable life, but things quickly took a dark turn. When money troubles hit, Gladys sent Marilyn to live with Albert and Ida Bollender, strict evangelical foster parents in rural Hawthorne. Gladys moved to the city for work and hoped to reunite with her daughter. In 1933, she even managed to get a home in Hollywood and brought 7-year-old Marilyn back. But just 1 year later, everything fell apart. Gladys suffered a devastating mental breakdown and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. Marilyn's world collapsed once again. From that point, Marilyn's life was filled with pain and confusion. She became a ward of the state, tossed from home to home. Grace Goddard, a friend of her mother's, stepped in and took over Marilyn's care. But those years were anything but stable. Marilyn developed a stutter and became distant. She was placed with different families and even lived for a short time in the Los Angeles Orphans' Home No. 2. It was a heartbreaking chapter in her life, one filled with loss, fear, and abandonment. Eventually, Grace Goddard fought to become her legal guardian in 1936. Still, Marilyn didn't leave the orphanage until the summer of 1937. Over the next few years, she bounced between the Goddards and distant relatives across Los Angeles and Compton. All the chaos lit a fire inside her. Marilyn dreamed of escaping, and becoming an actress gave her that hope. She once said movies helped her survive the grim world around her. And by 1938, life gave her a small break. She moved in with Grace's aunt and began attending Emerson Junior High, where she shined as a writer for the school paper. While her grades stayed average, her passion for storytelling stood out. Sadly, health issues forced her to leave and return to the Goddards in 1941. Later that year, she joined Van Nuys High School. But life had another twist waiting. In 1942, Grace's husband got a job that would take them all to West Virginia. But Marilyn couldn't go. Child protection laws stopped her from leaving the state. So, in a shocking decision, she got married instead just after turning 16. Her new husband? The Goddard's 21-year-old neighbor, James Doherty. She dropped out of school and stepped into the role of a housewife. But the dream didn't last. She soon felt trapped, calling the marriage dull and unfulfilling. When Doherty joined the Merchant Marines in 1943, Marilyn followed him to Catalina Island. She had no idea her life was about to change forever, from modeling to stardom. In April 1944, Doherty was sent off to the Pacific for 2 long years. While he was away, Marilyn moved in with his family and found work at the Radio Plane Company, a factory that made military gear. Then came the moment that changed everything. At the end of 1944, a photographer named David Conover showed up at her factory. He had been sent by none other than Captain Ronald Reagan to take photos of working women to lift morale. He noticed something special about Marilyn. Even though her photos weren't published, her spark didn't go unnoticed. By January 1945, she quit the factory and stepped into the world of modeling. Working with Conover and his friends, she began building her new image, far from the sad girl who once lived in orphanages. Even though her husband didn't approve, she pressed on. In August 1945, she signed with the Blue Book Model Agency and never looked back. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a movie star. She was a phenomenon. In the 1950s and early 60s, she ruled Hollywood like a queen. Her face was everywhere, on billboards and magazines and glowing from every screen in America. But behind the flawless smile and glamorous dresses was a woman carrying the weight of deep pain, secrets, and betrayal. And in 1962, the world was stunned when Marilyn was found dead at just 36 years old. For decades, rumors swirled. And then, 60 years later, Frank Sinatra finally spoke out. What did he know? What really happened to the world's most famous blonde? This is the shocking truth behind Marilyn Monroe's tragic life, and the secret Sinatra waited decades to reveal. Before she was Marilyn Monroe, she was Norma Jean Mortensen, born in 1926. Her childhood was anything but glamorous. Her mother, Gladys, had a fragile mind and a broken heart. After a failed marriage and a brief affair with a man named Charles Stanley Gifford, she gave birth to Norma Jean, but kept the father's identity a secret. In fact, Marilyn didn't even know she had a half-sister until she was 12. At first, things were stable. But when Gladys suffered a complete mental breakdown in 1934, little Marilyn's life changed forever. She was passed around from one home to another, living in orphanages, foster homes, and with relatives who couldn't keep her long. At just 7 years old, she watched her mother get taken away and never fully come back. It was trauma that would shape her forever. By 16, she was desperate to escape the foster system. Her solution? Marriage. She wed 21-year-old James Doherty in 1942, barely past her 16th birthday. She dropped out of school, became a housewife, and quickly realized she hated it. The boredom was suffocating. Then something unexpected happened. While her husband was away in the Merchant Marines during World War II, Marilyn got a job at a munitions factory. That's where a photographer spotted her, and everything changed. That photographer's name was David Conover, sent by none other than Ronald Reagan to boost morale with pretty pictures of women workers. Marilyn's photos weren't chosen, but she had found her calling. She quit the factory job and started modeling full-time. She bleached her hair, straightened it, and became a blonde bombshell. Men's magazines couldn't get enough. In less than a year, she was on 33 magazine covers. She was reborn. But Marilyn wanted more than fame from photos. She wanted to act. In 1946, she signed a contract with 20th Century Fox and officially changed her name to Marilyn Monroe, a name that would go down in history. But her early roles were small, forgettable. Fox dropped her. Columbia picked her up, then dropped her too. She posed nude under the alias Mona Monroe, just to survive. But behind the scenes, she was playing a different kind of game, using charm and powerful connections to stay close to the spotlight. One of those connections was Johnny Hyde, a top agent at William Morris. He got her back into Fox. And this time, Hollywood started to pay attention. Marilyn's big break came in 1950 with small roles in The Asphalt Jungle and All About Eve. They were short scenes, but unforgettable. The camera loved her, and so did audiences. Fox signed her again, and by 1953, she was everywhere. Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire. She was a box office smash and the official sex symbol of Hollywood. The men adored her. The women copied her. But behind the scenes, Marilyn was cracking. In 1952, a scandal erupted when it was revealed she had posed nude for a calendar back in her struggling days. But instead of hiding, she owned it. She said she did what she had to do to survive. The public didn't turn on her. In fact, they loved her more. She was vulnerable. She was real. And that made her dangerous to the powerful people trying to control her image. As Marilyn climbed higher, so did the pressure. She became known as difficult to work with, often late to set, often heavily medicated, and often spiraling emotionally. She struggled with insomnia, anxiety, and drug dependency. Many blamed her, but few asked why. She once said, "I'm not interested in money. I just want to be wonderful." But wonderful wasn't enough, not in an industry that prized her looks over her mind. She married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio in 1954, but ended in divorce just 9 months later. He loved her, but couldn't handle the public's love for her. He wanted a wife. The world wanted a goddess. She tried again with playwright Arthur Miller in 1956. He saw her intellect, but their marriage, too, fell apart. She longed for love. She longed to be understood. But instead, she was treated like a product, marketed, consumed, and discarded. In her final years, Marilyn was deeply involved with two of the most powerful men in America, President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert Kennedy. Rumors of affairs swirled. Some say she knew too much. Then, in August 1962, she was found dead from an overdose. Accidental? Suicide? Or something more sinister? For decades, the truth was buried until Frank Sinatra came forward. Sinatra, a close friend of both Marilyn and the Kennedys, claimed she was murdered. He said she was silenced because she was about to go public with secrets that could destroy powerful men. He even admitted he was supposed to go to Marilyn's house the night she died, but canceled last minute. That detail haunted him for the rest of his life. So what really happened to Marilyn Monroe? Was it a tragic accident? Or was it a cover-up at the highest level of power? We may never know the full story, but one thing is clear. Marilyn Monroe was more than a pretty face. She was a woman who fought for love, respect, and her voice in a world that tried to silence her. And even in death, she never stopped shining. In her final months, Marilyn Monroe lived alone in a quiet house in Brentwood, Los Angeles. But peace was the last thing she had. On the night of August 4th, 1962, her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, was staying over. Around 3 a.m., Eunice got a strange feeling. Something was wrong. She called out to Marilyn, but got no answer. Her bedroom door was locked, and there was only silence on the other side. Panicked, Eunice called Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Green's son. He rushed over and tried calling out too. Still nothing. Fearing the worst, he broke through a window and entered the room. What he found was heartbreaking. Marilyn Monroe was lying motionless in bed, lifeless. By 3:50 a.m., her personal doctor, Hyman Engelberg, arrived and confirmed what everyone feared. Marilyn was dead. The police were called at 4:25 a.m. But the truth is, Marilyn had died much earlier, between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. the night before. The toxicology report was chilling. Her body was filled with chloral hydrate and pentobarbital, powerful barbiturates. There were empty pill bottles scattered around her bed. The dosage wasn't just high. It was way beyond what could ever be called accidental. Investigators ruled out foul play. There were no signs of struggle, but there were signs of deep emotional pain. Her doctors admitted she had a long history of depression, anxiety, and past suicide attempts. Deputy Coroner Thomas Noguchi took all this into account and ruled her death a probable suicide. Still, the world didn't want to believe it. News of her death spread like wildfire across America and Europe. People were shocked, heartbroken, angry. French artist Jean Cocteau said her death should serve as a warning about how Hollywood eats people alive. Fellow actors like Laurence Olivier and Joshua Logan blamed the press and the pressure. Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn's ex-husband, was shattered, along with her half-sister Bernice and her business manager. He arranged a private funeral on August 8, 1962, at Westwood Village Memorial Park. Only close friends were allowed inside, but a crowd gathered outside, trying to say goodbye. Joe never stopped loving her. He kept his promise to Marilyn, sending roses to her grave every week for the rest of his life. But the story didn't end there. In the years that followed, rumors exploded. People said she was murdered, that powerful people wanted her silenced. Some blamed the Kennedy family. Others pointed to the mafia. And in 1973, author Norman Mailer threw gasoline on the fire, suggesting Marilyn's death was not suicide, but assassination. The pressure got so intense, the Los Angeles district attorney reopened the case in 1982. But even after a fresh investigation, there was no proof of foul play. Still, not everyone was convinced. Frank Sinatra, who had once been one of Marilyn's closest friends, took her death personally. He never bought the official story. Tony Pedicano, Sinatra's former road manager and close confidant, later revealed Sinatra believed Marilyn was murdered. In his memoir, Sinatra and Me, in the wee small hours, Pedicano said Frank was haunted by her death. He didn't think it was a suicide. He didn't think it was an overdose either. He thought someone wanted Marilyn gone. People assumed Frank and Marilyn had a romantic thing going. But according to Pedicano, their relationship was different, deep, caring, and complicated. Frank admired Marilyn's charm, beauty, and humor, but he also saw her pain. He thought she was too fragile, too broken for a fling. He cared too much. And even decades later, he couldn't let go of the idea that someone out there had killed her and gotten away with it. Frank Sinatra's closest friend, Tony Pedicano, once dropped a bombshell about Marilyn Monroe's final days. He said Marilyn trusted him with her deepest secrets, including her affairs with President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Robert F. Kennedy. But when those love affairs ended suddenly, Marilyn was heartbroken and confused. She turned to Frank Sinatra. She told him she didn't understand why the Kennedys had cut her off completely after it ended. One minute she was in their inner circle, and the next, she was a ghost. Then came the weekend that changed everything. Just days before her mysterious death, Marilyn stayed at the Cal Neva Lodge near Lake Tahoe, a resort part owned by Sinatra. But what the public didn't know was that Marilyn was planning a press conference the following week. She wanted to announce a romantic reunion with Joe DiMaggio, her ex-husband. That announcement sent shockwaves behind the scenes. There were whispers that Marilyn might also expose her secret affairs with the Kennedys during the press event. But Sinatra didn't believe she'd ever betray them. He told Pedicano Marilyn still had feelings for JFK. She loved him, even after everything. Still, Sinatra had a bad feeling. His lawyer, Mickey Rudin, warned him about a chilling rumor that Marilyn was murdered not by pills, but by a barbiturate suppository inserted while she was unconscious. Then it got darker. Sinatra's mafia connections began talking. One name kept coming up, Sam Giancana, a powerful mob boss from Chicago. Giancana hinted that someone close to both the Kennedys and Sinatra might have helped silence Marilyn for good. Another mobster, Johnny Rosselli, told Sinatra straight up, Marilyn was killed to protect the Kennedys' political future. Sinatra listened. He connected the dots from his lawyer, from the mob, from Marilyn herself. And he became convinced Marilyn Monroe didn't die by accident. She was taken out. According to Sinatra, Robert F. Kennedy, with help from Union leader Jimmy Hoffa, was involved in a plot to have Marilyn killed. The method? A fatal injection while she was weak and vulnerable. Why? Because Marilyn was becoming a threat. Her upcoming press conference, her closeness with Joe DiMaggio, her lingering ties to the Kennedys, it was all too risky. If she talked, even by accident, it could blow up the image of Camelot and ruin JFK's shot at re-election. And the mob? They wanted to keep the Kennedys happy. In return, they expected political favors and Union support. Frank Sinatra believed Marilyn became the victim of a cold, political assassination, masterminded by the biggest power players in America. Sinatra was convinced that a fake medical examiner helped cover it up, administering the fatal dose and hiding the real cause of death. And he didn't stop there. For years after her passing, Sinatra hired private investigators, combed through her phone records, and dug through her medical files, searching for the truth. He felt it was his duty to expose what really happened to Marilyn, no matter how powerful her enemies were. He believed the Kennedy family, Jimmy Hoffa, organized crime, and even the Los Angeles Police Department had blood on their hands, and all worked together to erase her. According to Sinatra, Marilyn knew too much, and for that, she paid the ultimate price. So now the question is, what do you think? Was Marilyn Monroe's death a tragic overdose? Or was it an assassination buried by America's elite? Let me know in the comments. And if this story shocked you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got even more untold Hollywood secrets coming your way.